It was a chilly evening outside a busy club. The street lights flickered and faint sounds of loud music and laughter spilled out from the club. 4 men, clearly drunk, staggered out of the club, surrounded by a few women who nervously giggled at their drunken behavior. They were laughing and stumbling around. Parked nearby was a shiny black car that belonged to one of the men. Next to the car stood a scruffy stray dog. The dog wagged its tail happily, sniffing around for any food scraps it could find. The dog didn't know it was about to become part of something terrible. The men noticed the dog and its innocent behavior, and that's when everything changed. The dog, looking for food, unknowingly lifted its leg and urinated on the car's front tire. One of the men immediately noticed and exploded with anger. "Look at what this filthy dog just did to my car," he shouted. His friends started laughing at first, but their laughter soon turned into cruel, mocking words. "That dog needs to be taught a lesson," one of them slurred. The poor dog, oblivious to the trouble it had caused, stood there wagging its tail, still hoping for some kindness. But no kindness was coming. Without any hesitation, one of the men raised his leg and kicked the poor dog. The dog yelped in fear and jumped a few steps back, but it didn't run far. It was too weak and hungry to get away. The other men cheered as their friend prepared to kick the dog again. It was clear that they felt strong because they thought they had power over the helpless creature. They laughed at the dog's suffering. Just as the situation was getting worse, a tall figure appeared at the end of the street. The man walked toward them with an unassuming but commanding presence. The group of men continued their mocking, not paying attention to the approaching figure. But as the man got closer, his calm footsteps cut through the drunken laughter. It was Keanu Reeves. Although none of the men recognized him in the dim street lights, Keanu's quiet yet powerful presence made the air feel different. His demeanor was calm, but his eyes quickly spotted the cruel scene unfolding near the car. The stray dog was now cowering against the curb, its thin body trembling with fear. Keanu stopped a few feet away and watched the men, his expression a mix of disappointment and controlled anger. "What's going on here?" Keanu asked, his voice low but firm. His question was clear and strong, cutting through the drunken laughter like a knife. The men turned to look at him, a little surprised by the interruption. The leader of the group scoffed, clearly annoyed. "Mind your own business, buddy. This filthy dog ruined my car." "We're just teaching it a lesson," he slurred, his words heavy with alcohol. The other men nodded and continued to laugh cruelly at the dog. Keanu didn't step back. Instead, he took a step closer, his posture relaxed but his presence powerful. "Teaching a dog a lesson by kicking it? Is that what makes you feel big?" he asked. His tone was calm, but it held an edge that made the men feel uncomfortable. The leader of the group, still drunk and feeling brave, stepped forward. "Who are you to tell us what to do? Get lost before we teach you a lesson too," he shouted. But Keanu didn't flinch. Instead, he looked down at the dog whose wide, frightened eyes were staring back at him. In that moment, Keanu silently promised to protect the dog no matter what. He stood his ground, his calmness turning into a quiet form of authority that made the men uneasy. The leader of the group, still thinking he was in control, laughed and said sarcastically, "What's this guy's deal? Are you some kind of hero for stray dogs now?" His friends burst into laughter, clearly not understanding what was happening. Keanu didn't react to the laughter. His eyes stayed focused on the leader, silently weighing his every move. Keanu took another step forward. The tension in the air grew thicker, but he remained calm and steady. "Hurting something weaker than you doesn't make you strong. It makes you a coward," he said, his voice steady but powerful. The leader's smirk wavered for a moment, and for a split second, doubt flashed in his eyes. But he quickly regained his bravado and puffed out his chest. "Oh yeah? And what are you going to do about it?" he sneered. The other men laughed again, egging the leader on. Keanu didn't respond with words. Instead, he took a step forward, positioning himself between the men and the trembling dog. His calm and steady presence made the men hesitate for a moment. The leader, still determined to show his dominance, cracked his knuckles and snarled, "All right, tough guy, you asked for it." What happened next was so fast that the people watching could hardly believe their eyes. The leader lunged at Keanu, throwing a punch at him. But Keanu was too quick. With a swift sidestep, Keanu avoided the punch, and before the man could react, Keanu grabbed his arm and twisted it, sending the leader stumbling to his knees. The other 3 men stood frozen in shock, unable to believe what had just happened. Keanu didn't get angry. His movements were smooth and controlled, as though he had done this many times before. The leader groaned in pain, his confidence shattered. The second man, seeing his leader fail, decided to take action. He rushed at Keanu, but just like the first man, he didn't stand a chance. Keanu swiftly dodged the man's attack, pivoted to the side, and landed a light, controlled strike to the man's chest. The blow wasn't hard enough to hurt him badly, but it was enough to knock the man off balance and send him stumbling backward. The crowd outside the club, who had been laughing at the men's drunken antics, now watched in stunned silence. The other two men, who had been cheering their friends on, exchanged nervous glances. Their courage was fading quickly. "Do you still want to try?" Keanu asked, his voice calm but with a cold, steely undertone that sent a shiver down their spines. One of the men, desperate to save face, grabbed a beer bottle from the ground and charged at Keanu. But Keanu didn't wait. He ducked under the attack, swept the man's legs out from under him, and sent him crashing to the pavement. The bottle flew out of his hand, harmlessly skittering away. The fourth man, seeing what had happened to his friends, didn't even try to fight. He turned and ran down the street, leaving his friends behind. The remaining three men lay on the ground, groaning and clutching their bruises. The crowd that had been watching them now stood in shocked silence, their earlier amusement replaced with unease and awe. Keanu didn't spare another glance at the fallen men. Instead, he turned his attention to the scared dog that was still trembling by the curb. The dog's tail was tucked between its legs, its eyes wide with fear. But when Keanu crouched down and extended his hand gently toward the dog hesitated for only a moment. Then, slowly, it inched closer to him, drawn to the kindness Keanu was offering. Keanu didn't rush or try to force the dog. He let the dog come to him at its own pace. After a few moments of hesitation, the dog cautiously walked toward him and, feeling Keanu's calm energy, allowed him to gently touch its head. The dog, now safe from the men who had been so cruel, looked up at Keanu with trusting eyes. Keanu didn't say anything. He just stayed calm and kind, letting the dog know that it was now safe. It was a moment of quiet heroism, a moment when Keanu Reeves showed not just strength, but compassion for the helpless creature. And that's how the night ended, with the dog safe and Keanu Reeves, without saying a word, having taught the men a lesson they would never forget. Keanu's voice softened as he spoke gently to the dog. "It's okay, buddy, you're safe now." The dog sniffed Keanu's hand carefully, unsure of what was happening but sensing the kindness in Keanu's touch. Slowly, the dog nuzzled its nose against his palm, a sign of trust beginning to form. Keanu, understanding the animal's fear, stroked its fur gently, moving slowly and carefully so as not to startle the dog any further. The crowd that had gathered around, initially tense and whispering, grew silent. Some people took out their phones, recording the unexpected moment, while others simply stood there, watching with admiration and awe at the compassion Keanu was showing. The men who had caused the trouble, the ones who had first been cruel to the dog, started to stir, realizing they had made a huge mistake by getting involved with someone like Keanu. One of them muttered, "Let's just go," and despite their bruises and humiliation, they managed to pull themselves up, limping away with their heads hanging low. The loud, rowdy group that had once been filled with bravado and pride was now quiet, humbled, and embarrassed. They had learned the hard way that they had picked the wrong person to mess with, and their arrogance had quickly turned to shame. Keanu, still cradling the dog in his arms, stood up and turned to face the crowd that had been watching. The whispering had stopped, replaced by a deep, hushed respect. The people looked at Keanu, some still unsure if they were witnessing an ordinary man or someone extraordinary. A young woman, hesitantly stepping forward with her phone in her hand, softly asked, "Are you Keanu Reeves?" Her voice was filled with wonder, and her question caused a ripple of realization to run through the crowd. People gasped and whispers quickly spread. Keanu gave a small, humble nod, a faint smile tugging at his lips. "I'm just someone who couldn't walk away," he said quietly, his voice carrying a sincerity that resonated deeply with everyone there. The crowd was moved by his words. Some people started to clap, their appreciation growing louder and louder. One person even shouted, "You're a real-life hero." Others agreed, their voices joining in with words of admiration. But Keanu didn't pay much attention to the praise. His focus remained on the dog, who was now looking up at him with eyes full of trust and gratitude. He reached down and gently petted the dog, continuing to reassure it with his calm voice. One of the people in the crowd spoke up, asking, "What's going to happen to the dog?" Keanu glanced down at the scruffy animal in his arms. The dog looked fragile, but there was a spark of hope in its eyes now, a spark that had been missing just moments before. Keanu's expression softened even more, and without hesitation he said, "He's coming with me." His voice was firm, showing there was no question in his mind that he would care for the dog. The onlookers watched as Keanu, still holding the dog close, began to walk away. Some people continued recording, knowing they were witnessing something important, something that would soon be shared all over the world. But even as the cameras rolled, the moment felt personal, as though everyone in the crowd had been part of something special and meaningful. By the time Keanu reached his car with the dog nestled comfortably in his arms, the video of the incident had already started to spread online. People from all over the world watched the footage, and soon hashtags like #KeanuTheHero and #DogRescue began trending on social media. Within hours, the story was everywhere. People admired Keanu for his bravery, but also for the way he had shown kindness and compassion to an animal that had been hurt and scared. One tweet read, "Keanu didn't just save a dog, he showed the world what kindness looks like," and it quickly went viral with thousands of people liking and sharing it. Meanwhile, the four men who had started the whole incident were nowhere to be seen. They were hiding in shame, trying to avoid the public backlash. They had become the target of online criticism, with people calling out their cruelty and condemning their actions. Some commenters even wrote things like, "You're Jackie, that wasn't Keanu's dog. Who knows what would have happened if it was?" The men had realized just how Jackie they were, that Keanu had shown them mercy. They were terrified of what could have happened if the dog had been Keanu's own pet. One of the men, scrolling through his phone, said in a nervous tone, "We messed with Keanu Reeves. Do you realize how bad this could have been? He could have broken us in half and no one would have said a word." They nervously laughed, trying to lighten the mood, but the fear in their voices was clear. The thought of what Keanu could have done to them if they had hurt his pet haunted them. The men quickly stopped going to the clubs and parties they used to enjoy. They stayed home, avoiding the nightlife and keeping a low profile. They couldn't stop thinking about the lesson they had learned. Though none of them would ever admit it out loud, they all silently agreed they had been wrong, and they were thankful that Keanu had shown them mercy instead of seeking revenge. The incident had become a wake-up call, forcing them to think about their behavior and confront the arrogance and cruelty they had once thought was acceptable. As the story of Keanu and the dog, now named Jackie, spread, it continued to grow in significance. News outlets picked it up, and fans around the world praised Keanu not just for saving the dog, but for the message of kindness and humility he had shown. People started sharing stories of their own acts of kindness, inspired by Keanu's example. Animal shelters saw an increase in people wanting to adopt pets, and organizations focused on animal welfare used the story to advocate for better treatment of stray animals. Keanu, who was already a beloved actor, had now become an even bigger symbol of compassion. Jackie the dog had become a little star in his own right. Photos of him with Keanu, showing how much the dog had healed, started circulating online. One photo in particular caught everyone's attention. It was a picture of Keanu sitting on his porch, reading a book, while Jackie rested his head on Keanu's lap. It was a simple, quiet moment, but it was powerful. It reminded people that kindness doesn't always have to be big or loud to make a difference. Even the smallest acts of kindness can have a huge impact on someone's life. Keanu's kindness toward the dog wasn't just a story about one man helping one animal. It was a story about the power of kindness in a world where cruelty often gets attention. It was a reminder that even when we're faced with tough situations, we always have a choice to do what's right. Keanu didn't see himself as a hero, but as someone who simply did what he believed was the right thing to do. He didn't want to be praised. He just wanted to help, and in doing so he set an example for others to follow. Jackie, now safe and loved, settled into his new life with Keanu. The dog's body had been weak and frail when Keanu first found him, but now, with the warmth of a cozy home and the gentle care of his new owner, Jackie was finally at peace. Keanu made sure he had everything he needed: food, water, a warm bed, and most importantly, love. The dog had been through a lot, but now he was surrounded by safety and comfort. As days passed, the story of Keanu and Jackie became more than just a viral moment. It became a global conversation. People around the world were talking about the importance of kindness, compassion, and taking responsibility for our actions. Fans of Keanu Reeves flooded social media with stories of their own acts of kindness, and animal shelters reported an increase in pet adoptions. Keanu had started a movement, one that reminded everyone that small acts of kindness can have a big impact. Keanu, for his part, went about his life as usual, continuing to be a symbol of humility and kindness. He didn't need the attention. He didn't want to be called a hero. But the world couldn't help but see him as one. And the dog, Jackie, continued to thrive in his new life, a happy, loved pet who had found the safety and care he had always needed. The lesson from this story was simple. Every act of kindness, no matter how small, can make a difference. Whether it's for a person or an animal, standing up for what's right is always worth it. The story of Keanu and Jackie showed that kindness could change lives, and it reminded everyone that doing the right thing is always the best choice. If you enjoyed this story, share your thoughts in the comments below and don't forget to subscribe for more stories. I'll see you in the next video.